You're listening to episode 69, Liza's Story, a daughter with Lyme disease. Hi, and welcome to the Child Life On Call podcast. When your child is sick, the whole world seems to stop in its tracks. Plans and priorities change, and your number one job becomes figuring out how to get your child well again. For some of us, rest, medications, and relaxation can do the trick. But for others, it takes more. It takes countless doctor appointments, invasive medical testing, therapy, surgeries, the list goes on, and then you still may not have all of the answers or results you were hoping for. This podcast features parents of children that have an illness or medical condition and gives them a place to share their own journeys and experiences. We will talk about the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, but one thing seems to remain the same. Children are resilient and teach us more about ourselves and the world than we could ever imagine. Thank you so much for lending a listening ear and opening up your heart to these families and this podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor.
I think if the journey didn't play out the way it did, I think I would still be stuck in the nitty-gritty of the little things of motherhood. I think I would have still been down there in the weeds. And she's repositioned me in my life to see things from a higher level. And I don't think I would have ever done the work on myself had it not been for her struggle.
Hey guys, did you know Child Life On Call is more than just a podcast? We have free resources for parents, kids, and professionals. And by the way, a new app coming out in 2022. We will be partnering with facilities to empower and educate kids, parents, and the care team, and we want you to be a part of it. Sign up to have the facility you visit or work for be one of the first to have access at childlifeoncall.com. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you're here today. I'm Katie, and it is May, actually the middle of May, which is just bananas. So we're always trying our best here at Child Life On Call, if you follow us on Instagram and Facebook, to raise awareness around different awareness months and days and weeks. And this month, I'm honored to share with you my conversation with Liza. She is the host of the Very Happy Stories podcast, and she's a mom from the suburbs of Chicago. She's talking with us today about her teenage kids and how they both have autoimmune issues, and actually one of them developed Lyme disease. So let's get started with her story.
So my daughter Ava has always been a highly sensitive child and really just came to planet Earth with a lot of anxiety. So with that being said, she did have a lot of quirks and anxious moments. But I would say probably around the 4th or 5th grade, she really started exhibiting a higher level of stress. And it was one of the situations where the pediatrician really couldn't assist us because on paper, she seemed totally normal. So I did start reaching out to other practitioners, maybe with like some supplements and things of this nature. But it wasn't until middle school where my daughter really started exhibiting more challenges physically, emotionally, and mentally. So that where her anxiety and OCD had presented when she was younger, now we were more in eating disorder, really high levels of panic. And we actually also tipped into hallucinations. And that was in middle school. And that is kind of where our journey led us. And ultimately, and also chronic fatigue, headaches, joint pain. And ultimately, as I was working with more of like a functional medicine doctor, she was diagnosed with Lyme disease.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And did you have any experience with Lyme disease yourself or know anybody who had had it before?
No, never. Never. But it's so unfortunate, Katie, that this is the case for so many people
Right.
that are suffering from Lyme. To get diagnosed is anywhere from a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year battle. And it's unfortunate, but so many people don't have a bullseye rash. And you just kind of start bumping along into the world of chronic illness. And then your symptoms kind of change. So yeah, it was, it was shocking, but then at the same time kind of made sense when I really looked into it.
Yeah. Tell us about, you talked about, the long process of getting diagnosed with Lyme disease. Was it something that was even on your radar, or when did you start? When did, I guess, your doctor start saying, I wonder if it's Lyme, if we could test for this? What was that process like?
Good question. Um, I started sharing my story about how my daughter, really her driver was the mental illness of really like, we have got to find something. She had been in a partial hospitalization program. She had been on medication. We had a team to help her through her challenges, but she was not really getting stabilized. And I took her to like the top university hospital in Chicago, like where people come from like all over the nation. And I'm like, I need an assessment. Does she have schizoaffective? Is she schizophrenic? Like, because I really wanted her to have the best treatment and the best protocol for the condition that she had.
Right.
But I couldn't get we were in the dark. And they did an extensive examination, and I had scans of all different kinds, and it really came back that she had high anxiety. So I started sharing my story with friends, acquaintances, kind of like organically through conversation. And one of my friends, who's a very good friend now, but at the time she was, an acquaintance friend, had said to me, Liza, I'm not trying to put a rabbit hole in front of you, but you might want to look into Lyme disease. I know somebody whose daughter presents in a similar fashion, and she has Lyme. And you know how I had mentioned I was already working with a functional medicine practitioner. So I asked her, can I get my daughter tested for Lyme? And she said, her name's Dr. Wu in the area. She said, yes, you should get her tested. You really need to use this very, it's basically the gold standard of tests, called the IGeneX test, because Lyme is very, very difficult to diagnose. It also has so many different co-infections, so many other tick-borne illnesses that are affecting you. So that's the test we did. We kind of had to wait 2 weeks, and then she called me when it was positive. So that really was the process. And I actually approached my functional medicine doctor I said, let's rule out Lyme.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and I really, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to rule it out so that I could better focus on a mental health disorder.
Do you have any idea when she was infected with it? Can you ever really tell that if she doesn't have that little bullseye marker?
Yeah. So in this journey, Katie, I've talked to so many practitioners about that. How did she get Lyme? And it's really, it really goes back to certain people. Like I said, she was highly sensitive, really being impacted by a toxin load. So, for instance, it's not just Lyme. My daughter also was exposed to mold exposure. We moved into a new house around that time, and we didn't know that we had mold in this crawl space. Now, most people would not be affected by that, but by that time in her life, she had such a overused immune system. It's like she has gut issues. So this impacted her with a leaky gut. She had a lot of bacterial growth, again, which weakened her immune system. And like the toxins in the food, the toxins in the water, like for my children who are so highly sensitive, it's not one thing. It was just like a toxin load that brought down their immune system. And over the years, that's why things just kept changing. And she wasn't getting better. And then when she had a pathogen like a tick, where most people would never even know the tick was on them, they wouldn't respond, that just did it for her.
Oh, wow.
Because she just was so vulnerable.
Right.
So it's a very complicated process that happens over the years by just living with a high toxin load. I mean, that's really just what happens.
I'm just thinking it's almost like just the perfect storm, as you say, right? It's
Yeah.
just like the combination of everything,
Yeah.
and it just has affected her a lot.
Yeah, and having anxiety does that. In school, my kids, she's neurodivergent, so she's highly gifted, but with that comes so much. She's predisposed to being anxious. And that is a contributing factor to working her immune system so hard.
What are her coping skills, and I'm curious about how is Ava able to talk about what's going on with her?
Sure. So she is an artist for sure. She's just painting, drawing. I mean, she goes through 100 sketchbooks a year, even.
Wow.
She's also really involved in cosplay. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where you get into a character, and it's a real art form.
Oh, cool.
And she's a teenager. Yeah, now she styles the wig, she does the makeup, you get into a character, and then there's so much involved in the editing with the music. It's so
amazing.
creative.
That's so cool.
Yeah, she does a lot of that. But I think the silver lining actually is that, she had to go into a lot of therapy at a young age, in middle school. So she knows how to process and go through, checking your mindset. We've done so many different types of therapies. Exposure response is big in the OCD world. She's overcome an eating disorder. She processes faster and has that skill more than some adults,
Wow.
walking this earth, because she's had to go through the process. And I'm just grateful that, she was still under our wing when everything went down. I think it would have been harder if she was 22 or in college when she's not with us in the home.
She just sounds like an incredible person to be able to come through all of this at such a young age. And I would guess that a lot of that has to do with you and kind of your example and advocating and fighting and staying on top of it all.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, she is 15, so I have to say I have a full-fledged teenager in my house. There's a lot of attitude. I mean, I am not her best friend. We don't have that kind of relationship right now.
Right.
But, Katie, I really had to step into my own empowerment seat to get through this journey. If it was not for the struggles of my children, I don't think I would have come to a place of healing myself. It's like the struggles and challenges that they bring forth made me have to do the work on myself, because I really am so desperate to heal them. So I actually had to go through this own healing journey to model how to self-regulate, to model, I believe everything is going to be okay. You have to really live that and be that to be able to transfer that energy to your kids, that they believe it's going to be okay. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
And
beyond.
You can't be all chaotic. Yeah, you can't be in a state, you can't be a mother or father in a state of crisis to help your children. So you have to do the work. And that's what I actually speak to now to help other parents is you have to actually heal yourself first.
We'll be right back. How old were you when you first read a fiction book starring a character who looked like you? For many American kids, the answer is high school or even college. The stories we tell our kids convey what is important, beautiful, and acceptable. If stories about our children of color are absent, we are sending a strong message about who matters and who doesn't. A Jumbo book subscription is like hitting the easy button for great diverse literature for your children. Every month, Jumbo Books sends you 2 or 3 age-appropriate fiction books that star children of color. Jumbo Books is a great gift for baby showers, birthdays, holidays, or just because. Learn more at jumbobooks.com/childlife. Yeah, wow, it's striking a chord with me this morning because I was dropping my son off at school and we were just the normal morning rush. And
Sure.
he's in kindergarten and he tries to get out of the car and, I'm hitting the unlock button and he has the door handle open. So it's obviously not going to unlock. Like, it just turns into this whole mess. He gets out of the car. He can't get out of the car. I have to get out. I'm in my sweatpants, embarrassed. I let him out. I squeeze out and I love you, but clearly I'm frustrated.
Right.
And I get back in the car and I just look over to the passenger side and he's staring at me in the window with just tears in his eyes. And he's like, mask, mask. We've forgotten the mask in this whole rush. And I left feeling like, man, I wish I had better control over myself when I was getting so frustrated at the door handle, and
yeah,
it's just, you're so right. Like we really have to learn how to get ourselves into a Zen state to model that for our child. We could have handled that so differently. And I think it's even more amplified when you are fighting for your child's health and the stakes are so much higher. I think a carpool lane is stressful. You're living in that all the time, right? You're always living in that carpool lane where you got to get it done now and figure it out so you can get forward.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. Yeah, you are. And I also wrestled with this whole notion of, I lived with this narrative of all I need to be happy in life is for my kids to be happy and healthy. Mm-hmm. And Katie, they weren't. They weren't happy and healthy. And I even think I would say that narrative out loud in front of in my daughter's presence, not to her, but like, I'm so easy. All it takes for me to be happy is for my kids to be happy and healthy. And that is a lot of pressure on a child.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I need to be happy and healthy to make my mom happy. And it was such a disservice to my kids. And like, fast forward 10 years later, my daughter told her therapist, like, well, what would make me happy is if my mom was happy. And that's what really checked me into like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out myself. Because there was an impact. There was like this energetic impact on her, and for her to be healthy, I got to flip this. This is like upside down. I needed to be healthy and happy authentically so that, I can be a solid figure for them.
What are the tools that you use to, how did you begin that journey? And then what tools are you using now to stay centered?
Yeah. So through my journey, I was like, well, what would make me happy and healthy? I mean, I really had no idea because I lived with this false narrative for so long. And I was a commercial real estate broker at this time. I mean, I was still working, and I was like running these deals that would they would take like a year to do. It was super rewarding financially, but I don't know if it was like, filling my bliss and my love. And I ended up shifting gears and going into public speaking and doing a podcast and putting my love into that creative process. It really lights me up. And at the same time, because, my daughter and my son both have chronic illness, I wanted to speak with some of the top leading experts. And so and do this thing now where I put them on my podcast, to share wisdom and to also learn. And that is, so first and foremost, I had to figure out what would make me happy. And that's what I do, to feel fulfilled, really, and to keep me balanced. But I mean, throughout the day, I really need a morning routine. I needed to set myself up for a balanced mindset. So I'm a big believer in the morning routine. Doesn't even have to be complicated. I need my dog walk. I need like 15 minutes in the morning by myself, just in the bathroom, getting ready, being present. I need a 5-minute meditation. These are little things. Right. You know what I mean? I need to just journal a list of like my top 5 for the day of to-dos and make sure that not all of those are caring for other people. I've just got to have 1 or 2 bullets that are just for myself. I think it's the little things that really in your day that make the biggest impact.
I just love that. And, I think starting with even one of those is big. And I can speak for me when I don't get up when I want to and I choose to sleep, and then either the dog or my kids wake me up, I am just off the rest of the day. And like having that, getting up before they do for some reason, it can set me up so much better. And it's different. I know I have a 2 and 5-year-old. So we're talking they're up at 6:15, but I really do need to get up at 6 if I want to have a good day.
It's so true. I know. It's just that moment. It's about having a couple moments all to yourself at the very beginning of your day. Because it's all about, you got to love yourself first. You have to have that relationship with yourself first.
Yeah.
And so just to have those few moments is so impactful.
Have you guys been able to connect with other parents and teenagers that suffer from similar diagnoses like Lyme disease or OCD or the eating disorder?
Yes, I know. I do. I have some friends in my community whose children also suffer from Lyme and co-infections. My daughter has one friend through me having a friend and her daughter being impacted. My daughter's also friends with her. And then we're also in this PANS world. I don't know if you're familiar with PANS or pandas, but it's an odd. Yeah. So pandas is from strep, but PANS can come from Lyme or other infections. And my daughter also has PANS. So yeah, we're in a lot of communities. But I have to say, it's nice and comforting to have people in your network going through the same thing, but it's not my whole network, and I just lean towards this mindset of we are going through this, we are recovering, but one day it's not going to be like, it's not going to be our life. And it's something that we're going through right now. And that's that, I'm not one of those that's going to make it my whole life. And my daughter is kind of the same mindset too. So we're all in for advocacy and awareness and staying on top of like what are the latest protocols. But it's so important to have balance in your network and in your support system too.
How do your kids, especially because they're teenagers, and it's just a tough time anyway for relationships with the parent-child struggle, how are they handling you kind of talking about what they're going through and your experience with it?
Such a good question. They let me do my thing because they know that it makes me happy and I'm a happier mom, but I definitely asked them their permission at
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
and talked to them about it. And I shared a lot of my stories on my first season, but I really did shift gears and I really do more of like an interview setup now. So we're talking about like other people's stories
Right.
and and really about healing and empowerment that's not focused on them.
Yeah.
When I share awareness stories like in this episode, like I want to share, and this is going to help so many people.
Oh, there's
And
no
that's really
doubt.
yeah. So that's really always the long game. It's like sharing a story and a personal story, especially a story that impacts your kids, is so hard to do. There's a lot when you're going through it, so much shame, and you're afraid of judgment. And it's so easy to just put up the protective mama bear walls. But it wasn't until I started sharing my story, even about my daughter's mental health struggles with other people, that's where I got movement. That's when I got a diagnosis because, an acquaintance told me, you might want to look into this. So I just encourage people that when you are going through something so hard, if there is such a healing component to sharing your story. And because I really believe in that, it makes it, I don't have to feel nervous to do what I'm doing now.
Oh, totally.
And makes my kids feel better about it too.
Well, I love that. And I have to say, you have some pretty evolved kids to, be able to have that conversation and say, hey, for them to see number one, that it makes you happy. I look back at my
Yeah.
teenage years and I'm like, I guess I did care that my mom was happy. Sorry, mom, I know you're listening, but you're so in your own world and I would get embarrassed at the littlest thing. So you have some pretty evolved kids
Oh,
that,
thank you. But
support you in doing this.
well, I have to say my son though is like, you are cringe, mom. Like when
Yeah.
I am on Instagram, if he like, I'm like, oh, look at this thing I did on Instagram. He's like, I can't look at that. He's like, you are so cringe. I mean, he's like, you are so embarrassed. Like you know what I mean? Like
Love it.
all the things we do on social media now. And these kids are like, why are our parents on Instagram?
Oh,
They're like,
right.
now they move on to the next thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we creep in and no, I am such an embarrassing cringe mom
Oh, that's our
to my
job.
kids.
That's our
Yeah.
job, I
So
think.
yeah,
It makes them better
yeah.
humans when we do that stuff.
They don't
Oh,
listen to it. They don't hear it. They don't watch it. They know what I'm up to. And I do share like, oh my God, I had a great interview with this Lyme specialist. But
right.
they don't care,
Oh. What has your daughter taught you through this experience?
Oh my gosh. My daughter has given me the gift of happiness and finding my purpose. I think if if the journey didn't play out the way it did, I think I would still be a commercial real estate broker. And also not only that, but just stuck in the nitty gritty of the little things of motherhood. I think I would have still been down there in the weeds. And she's repositioned me in my life to see things from a higher level. And I don't think I would have ever done the work on myself had it not been for her struggle.
Wow. That's
It
pretty
really
profound.
pushed me to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really mean that. And I mean, I'm in my mid 40s and I didn't really tap into my purpose until my mid 40s. And that's okay. Like there's no timeline, but that is the gift, that she gave me.
Mm, man, that is so cool.
Yeah.
What resources do you recommend for parents who are navigating the beginnings of Lyme or mental illness?
Yes. Great question. So there's so much connected that we don't really think about when you have Lyme, chronic illness, you probably also have some learning differences. You might also have some mental health. It's actually not one thing. A lot of these things, and even like allergies, food sensitivities, So I love Epidemic Answers. It is a non-for-profit organization. They're online. You could Google them easily. And they provide so many webinars and books and resources that are talking about these types of issues. Because some of them seem so subtle. You could get your kid tested on something and then things come back normal, but in your heart and in your gut that what your child is presenting is not normal, right? Or not normal to them.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like a healthy 2, 3, 5, 6-year-old, and now they're completely struggling with daily things in middle school. What's happening? So like these are what the Epidemic Answers calls epidemic illnesses. So it's a great resource. And again, they've just got like webinars and things like that. And of course, I still love, the Attitude magazine. I still subscribe to that, and Psychology Today. I mean, because this situation with my children crosses so many different communities.
Mm-hmm.
So I wear a lot of hats. So I love all of that too. So yeah, I think those are, I think top of mind, that those are some of the things that that come to me that I would recommend.
That's great. And if our listeners want to come connect with you, follow you, listen to your podcast, how can they do that?
Yeah, you could. So Very Happy Stories is the podcast. It is found everywhere, like, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. You can just search it, Very Happy Stories, Liza Blast. And then I am on Facebook, Very Happy Stories with Liza Blast. I'm on Instagram. If you just search Very Happy Stories, you'll easily find me.
I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so, so much for being here. And you have given so much to us in this conversation today. And I just really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie. I am so inspired and in awe of all that you do too.
Thank you.
Really and truly, you're such a gift to the community, and I love what you do.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It is an honor to be in this space and meet people like you. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much for tuning in today to listen to my amazing conversation with Liza about a daughter who has Lyme disease and a recovering eating disorder and OCD. And I love how both Liza and her daughter have done so much work to become and process and have so much courage to just face what's going on in their lives. I think a lot of us can learn from that. So please go share this episode with someone who you think could benefit from some of Liza's tangible advice. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you for listening to the Child Life on Call podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor, and you can follow us at Child Life on Call on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please rate and review to make it easier for other families to find us. We have cute merch available at www.bonfire.com/store/childlifeoncall, and you can listen to more episodes and find resources at childlifepodcast.com.